Welcome to another edition of Carnivore Bites. I'm your host, Jeff Sherman, along with Dr. Eric Lopkin. And don't cry for me, Argentina, but it wasn't a good week for Uncle Joe, was it, Dr. Lopkin?
No, Biden had a rough week, and
Tough,
that
tough,
that
tough. Yep.
that rough week actually coincided with a really good week for Donald Trump. So those two things combined, not good for Joe Biden.
Wait, can I just interject something? Because I want your opinion, and so our listeners do as well. That whole thing about NATO, right? Because it was going to be a great week for Trump, but then, he made that comment about NATO and taken out of context. But I think in the end, the media overplayed that because I think it's starting to redneck. People are thinking, wait a second, migrants, and I mean, we're like ninth on the food chain. I'm talking people Americans in America, and they're like, yeah, why shouldn't these assholes pay for their own defense, and they're not doing shit against Putin. So I think it kind of was a positive for Trump in some weird way. What
It
do you
it
think?
it did end up as a positive for Trump because people did see it as, wait a minute, we're paying for the world at this point. We're paying for illegal migrants, we're paying for Ukraine, we're paying for NATO. It's like, we're not talking about third world countries that have no money, and we're helping them out. This is France and Germany who have failed to meet their obligations in terms of paying their share of NATO. So, yes, Americans are getting fed up with us being the bankroll for the entire world.
Yeah, and the threat is on their doorstep, and they're not doing jack shit. And I'll even go a step further. I mean, the Warsaw Pact was dissolved. Okay, supposedly when the Cold War ended. Of course, it's reheating itself, thanks to people like Uncle Joe and others. But is there really a need for NATO? Yeah, I mean, I can understand
Well, yeah, I mean,
alliances, and
there's
but
still a
who's
there's
funding
still
what? I mean,
yeah,
go
there's
ahead.
there's still a need for NATO, but the funding needs to be revisited because everybody needs to pay their fair share. But even with people realizing that, well, wait a minute, we shouldn't be footing the bill. If if Joe Biden had kept his mouth shut, that story might have had more legs. But no, Biden had to come out and start yelling, well, Trump said he would let Putin do whatever he wants. And everybody's first thought was, didn't you tell Putin that a limited incursion into Ukraine would be fine?
I saw that press conference.
Yeah. It's like
Well, it
he
wasn't really a
doesn't.
press. No, it was not a press conference because he says, "I'll take." I love it. I love it. It's like the checks in the mail. I'm not going to take questions now, but I'll take questions tomorrow. Yeah, I think there's a song, "Tomorrow Never Comes," whatever. It's
Yes.
not going to come. But he's looking. He looks so weak and out of it. And then how about his performance with the King of Jordan
Oh,
or the? I think it
it's
was a. Yeah, go ahead. It was
every
with Jordan. Yes,
yes.
out of control.
He had no
Saying, "Hey,
idea where to
Obama's in the
go.
wings." Yeah.
Yeah, he had no idea where to go. Karine Jean Pierre keeps saying, well, just look at him. You can see his energy. It's like, yeah, every
Yeah,
time we see him, it gets worse and worse. He's bumbling, he's making gaffes. And this is not new. There is a book coming out about the first ladies. And one of the stories in the book was told by Biden staffers that in 2022, on the 1 year anniversary of the inauguration, I don't know how many people will remember this, but Biden actually had a press conference that went about 2 hours. And by
I
the end,
remember that. Yes.
right, and by the end of the press conference, he was shot. He didn't know where he was. He was done. Well, according to the stories in this book, Jill Biden went off on his staff and him for letting the press conference go that long when they all knew he could not handle that.
Yes, I believe that was the press conference with the incursion, if I'm not mistaken. I really am not a big fan of Dr. Jill. Um, does she really even love the guy, or is it a typical liberal arrangement
Well,
relationship of convenience?
at this point, I think she needs to be prosecuted for elder abuse.
Yeah, of course, and that would be yes. And in a court case in a divorce, he would get all the money because it would be a clear case of, like you said, elder abuse
Th-
or general abuse. But getting back to the point, it was not a good week for Uncle Joe. He was declared, which is a very, very, very low bar, that he was really, they wouldn't bring charges because he was incapable of testifying. That is a bar that's scary. And I think that was the Rubicon, Dr. Eric E. Lopkin. That
that was
was
it.
that was it. That was gone. That was it. That was done. That was when whatever Fonzie was riding the shark or whatever. That's that's it. Cross the shark in the surfing thing. It's over. The bar to testify in America, you could be blown out on drugs, a complete alcoholic, and an IQ of 70. And guess what? 99% of this time, you're going to stand trial. I think it blows up Mar-a-Lago as well. The thing is cratering. And speaking of that, just throwing another thing, again, the whole Fannie Willis thing, that's crumbling faster than a house of cards. Your thoughts on a lot to handle, but go for it.
Well, we'll start with the special counsel report. The report itself was damaging. And just to be clear, because this has been misreported in the media and by Joe Biden himself. Joe Biden claimed that the report said that there was no willful misconduct. No, that is absolutely wrong. The report said that, yes, he knowingly and willfully took classified documents that he was not entitled to. Then they said the reason they are not recommending prosecution is because his lawyers would simply have him declared non compos mentos, which is not mentally fit to stand trial. And he would get off because of that. So they're not going to bother. And what was really amazing is that in the statement that he made, denying the fact that he had memory problems, one, he lied about what the report said. And then two, somebody asked him a question about Gaza, and he mistook the president of Mexico for the president of Egypt.
Okay, if that was a B movie, like, American International Productions, which was a real company back in the late 70s, made crap movies, B movies, you can't make that up. He's trying to convey or to persuade people he's mentally fit, and then he's talking about how the King Sisi, or the leader, President Sisi of Mexico, is letting in refugees from Gaza.
Yeah,
Yep.
it was
Yep. Yep. Yep.
absolutely
Yep. Yep.
amazing. And he got up there and proved the point of the special counsel report.
You really
While,
can't make it up, can you?
no, you really can't. I mean, it's almost sad, but that was the tipping point. Because after he did that, the New York Times editorial board came out against him. Axios has started criticizing all of the liberal media, except for the extreme left, who basically all they care is that Trump doesn't win. The liberal media started coming out and saying, all right, you know what? This can't stand. We cannot allow him to go on. Now, I was doing some research, and what I found interesting is that the deadline for most of the Democratic primaries runs out in 2 weeks. So if they don't put somebody up in these primaries before Super Tuesday, which is coming up, around the corner, there really isn't a candidate that can put up a campaign in time for Super Tuesday.
Okay, how about the other conspiracy theory? Hold on. What is he gets all the delegates, and at the convention he throws his delegates to Newsom or Michelle?
Well, that's just it. Where I was going with this is the fact that if they don't do this before Super Tuesday and actually have somebody running, the Democrats can't get rid of him unless he consents. And I don't think he's going to consent. I think he believes he's perfectly fit for another term. I think he believes he's got all his faculties. And if they tell him he can't run, he's going to tell them to F off and stay on the ballot. The,
You are 100% correct. And the other thing about it, to throw another little tidbit into that equation, is that he also is basically, I used to think it was Jagger Richards, like they loved each other. That is
no,
Biden and Obama. They effing hate each other, and he's resenting more and more that, like Rice and others and Obama indirectly, Axelrod are putting pressure on him to step aside. So his spine is he's getting more entrenched. Your
yeah,
thoughts?
there is absolutely no love lost between the Bidens and the Obamas. There never
No, they hate each
was.
other.
I
Never was.
think I think one thing that is making him dead set on staying in the race isn't just Trump. It's how many people are talking about, well, we can replace him with Michelle Obama. I think
Yes,
Biden is going, there is no way I'm going to allow that. I am staying in this race. So I think the Democrats back themselves into a corner. This is a crisis of their own making.
100%.
And they don't even have a competent vice president to fall back on.
Oh no, it's she's lower than him, which is another. We talked about, being able to stand trial, being lower than Uncle Joe. That's another feat. I mean, these things are pretty spectacular feats. Let's give credit where credit's due, Dr. Lopkin.
Well,
I mean, that's an amazing
give,
achievement. Are you nuts?
giving Biden credit where credit is due, he did finally come through on one of his campaign promises. He promised to unite the country. And in the last poll, 83% of the country believes he is unfit to be president. You
And
can't
even
get
70 plus Democrats. That's
Yes,
crazy.
you
71%.
can't
It's
get
crazy.
83% of Americans to agree the sun is shining, but 83% of Americans have agreed that he is not capable of being president anymore. Well, he
And
finally did it. He united the country.
100%. It's a kumbaya moment. And another thing that, again, a bad week for Uncle Joe is that not so long ago, I say within a month, basically it's dropped 12 points in a month. So it's not trending the appropriate way if you're Uncle Joe.
No,
So it was in the 70s or
it
late,
keeps
late,
getting
yeah.
worse and worse for him. And I mean, let's face it, mental faculties don't tend to come back. This is,
Oh, no.
this isn't like John Fetterman, who he lost his mental faculties because of a stroke and went to rehab and was able to, to work on it and get his faculties back. This
And become
is
a thorn in the Democratic
yeah,
side, by the way.
this
Go
is
ahead.
this is old age, this is dementia. There is no cure for it, but more importantly, not only isn't there a cure, he's denying it's happening. So he's not going to be doing anything to recover.
No, 100%. I would agree. I think it's also when you talk about dementia, this is another thing. I mean, I've been around the block, but sometimes you just have to pinch yourself and say, this cannot happen. This is not happening. It's a joke. It's a spoof. He, there's a, actually happened, went to a, I can't make this up. He went to a chicken, a fast food chicken place. Wasn't in a car. He was walking, okay? Went up to the drive through instead of going in, got some chicken, and then I guess they drove him to a black family's house, and he gave them a chicken dinner, and he actually said, "You don't mind if I just eat a hamburger?" In other words, I ain't eating your crap. But how condescending and I mean, what are you?
Condescending, racist.
I
I don't know who is behind the camera
oh
for
my
these. He had the opportunity to do an interview for the Super Bowl. He turned it down, probably rightly so, because I don't think he could have handled it. But instead of that, he decided to do a TikTok video. And if you watch this video, It's maybe a 3-minute video, if that. And
Maybe.
there's almost a dozen edit points in it because he couldn't go 3 straight minutes without screwing up. And again, there's
That is
a
100% true.
dozen edit points in 3 minutes. How badly was he performing? This is
Oh,
what
whoa, whoa, whoa,
America
whoa, whoa,
is
wait, 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 wait.
seeing.
And it's not even like Macbeth he had to recite.
No,
It was, do you like the Chiefs? Seriously, yes.
yes.
Trump, Biden, Biden. I mean, it wasn't like you had to even say. He probably said 3 sentences the entire 2 minutes.
Yeah, and
Three.
the whole
That's it.
thing was he was being given choices. All he had to do was pick one. And
That's right.
these weren't policy decisions. This was, what do you prefer, cheeseburgers or fried chicken? Who do you literally one of the questions was, who do you want to vote for, Trump or Biden? This is
They
how
probably, they probably. Wait a second. Knowing him, they probably had to re-edit that. They had to do a double take. He probably said Trump.
wouldn't surprise me. Also, wouldn't surprise me to find out he had the answers in front of him on cue cards and still couldn't read them.
100%, and it's kind of interesting. TikTok is basically an arm of the Chinese Communist Party and banned from any, and no government employee, federal government employee, can have the TikTok app on his or her cell phone. But Uncle Joe's doing another bad, bad, bad advice. Even Jon Stewart slammed him for that, which we talked about a couple of weeks ago or a week ago. That I'm not so sure he's going to be a shill of for Obama when he joins Comedy Central
You mean
again.
for
I'm
Biden?
not so sure. Biden, I'm sorry, Biden. Freudian. There you go.
We have to get that right, because if we're criticizing Biden for screwing up, we need to be on the ball. But
Well said.
yeah, no, Jon Stewart has been very critical of the Democrats for quite a while. And we've talked about this. It's the same thing with Bill Maher. He's still they're still diehard Democrats, but the Democratic Party has gone so far to the left that they're going, wait a minute, now we're going into crazy town. But what I found hysterical was he did go after Trump. He went after Biden. He was a bipartisan critic going after everybody. If you watch the liberal media, he never talked about Biden. He just went after Trump. He was back. He was the liberal champion. And if you actually watch the show, this is not what happened. He was a political pundit who was very fair and balanced, to steal the old Fox term.
Well, you won't see that on MSNBC, will you? But
No.
getting back also, just to close the bad week for Uncle Joe, well, actually, it's going to continue for a little bit here. He touted Bidenomics Saturday, and that didn't work out too well, Dr. Lopkin, did it?
No, he's really got to stop talking about Bidenomics.
Please stop immediately.
He tweeted about Saturday about how strong the economy is, and then on Tuesday morning, inflation numbers came out stronger than anybody expected. Inflation had gone up more. And in fact, there are certain parts of the economy that are really causing trouble. Specifically, I actually came across this just this morning: car ownership.
Yes, I saw the same thing. Yes.
The cost of owning a car has gone up 20.6% in terms
And
of
defaults are way up.
in terms of loan payments, in terms of
Yes.
tolls, in terms of repair costs, 20.6% year over year. It went up. General inflation went up 3.8% year over year. They were expecting under 3. But of course, because of this now, it's completely possible that the Fed, never mind, might not lower rates until the fall. That was already a possibility. Now there's worries they might have to raise rates again. The markets tumbled. They had their worst day in over a year, in some cases longer than that. And everything Biden was yelling about how good the economy was and how strong your 401k was went out the window.
Yes. Again, well, that's all they really have to hang on. I mean, the employment numbers, and then one thing, real quick, on the auto industry, that could really blow up in Uncle Joe's. Again, not a good week with union voters because his push for EVs. Well, beyond the EVs, just because of the financial strain everyone's in with inflation, inventories of both gas and
Yep.
EV cars are way up, way, way, way up.
Yeah,
And the
I
car industry is a
honestly
big part of our. Go ahead.
I honestly don't know what the unions were thinking of endorsing Biden. If you work in the auto industry, Biden is doing everything he can to get you
To
fired
destroy it. Yes.
because EVs don't require as many people to build them. Fewer people want them, so there's not going to be a demand. So you're going to see mass layoffs in the auto industry if Biden's policies continued. The same thing for the energy industry. If you work in oil, gas, or coal, Joe Biden wants you to lose your job. Why would you vote for him?
Agreed. And also, we didn't really have this on the docket, but he has a totally misguided, led by the Lurch himself, misguided energy policy. The biggest reduction in carbon emissions are due to the transformation, or the transformation from coal to natural gas. Yet he's stopping natural gas initiatives. The boy genius.
Yeah,
So it's
everything
really not about global warming. It's about control.
no, everything he has done to quote unquote help the environment has been a negative. Natural liquefied natural gas is so much cleaner than
Yes.
oil or coal, but that's what he's fighting against. He wants to stop that. It's like, no, we need to have a stopgap. You want to get rid of coal to help global warming, you want to limit oil to help global warming. We have to be able to go to natural gas because solar and wind are not ready for prime time.
Nah, not quite, is it? No. So yes, so Uncle Joe's really not getting it right. It's really unfortunate. But you even have, like, you talk about the Night of the Long Knives. Yeah, the New York Times did a focus group. Obviously, not a scientific. Well, focus groups aren't really geared towards being basically scientific and statistical projection. But 11 out of 15, and these are New Yorkers, independents, said they're going to vote for Trump, even though they dislike him personally. And like one said they'll vote for Biden, but that was very tentative to say the least. So not good. And also, we talked about this before on several occasions, but now it's really heating up, is especially with the migrant crisis and funding for Ukraine and all the other priorities, except for Americans and Americans who need maybe assistance or a leg up. The African American constituency is leaving faster than a jet on an aircraft carrier, correct?
Yeah, it's absolutely amazing. And it's not, Biden is not the only one facing the blowback on this. In Chicago, they just voted this mayor in, and the African American community is furious with him because he's taking resources away from them to give to the illegal migrants. So
Well,
Biden is getting hit with.
how about the Adams credit card? I mean, if you're a poor person, and I'd be pissed. I'd be pissed if I was a middle class person in New York.
Yeah, it's absolutely ridiculous how much money they are pushing. And, you know, the immigration laws as they stand right now are very clear cut. If you do not come across the border at an approved checkpoint, you are supposed to be evicted immediately. You don't get to apply for asylum. You don't get to wait for a court date. You are thrown out, period. By the same token, all Biden has to do is say, okay, You came in through an approved checkpoint, fill out this application. Great. Now go wait in Mexico. You have your choice. You can go wait in Mexico until your court
Or
date,
go
until we
home.
finish this. Or if you have a private citizen who is sponsoring you and will be financially responsible for you, you can have them come pick you up. And that's
Yes,
it.
and that's
That's all you need to do. It takes the burden off the sanctuary cities. It takes the burden off the border. And these are the existing laws.
yeah. So Biden's trying to spin that as well, but we do have the impeachment of Mayorkas. I think that is a positive for the media can spin it however they want. I think people have had enough of this shit, and I think it's a positive, a feather in the Republicans' cap. What do you think?
I think it's amazing that they actually all got together and agreed on something.
It's not going to go
Whether
anywhere, but I think it's
right,
good. People are saying, yeah,
whether it's a feather in their cap, I don't know if I would go that far because again, it's not going to go anywhere in the Senate.
still
It
draws attention.
it took quite a while. And to be fair, and I've heard Republicans actually say this who, were not in favor of the impeachment. You're essentially impeaching Mayorkas for following orders and doing what Biden told him to do. Well, that's his job. You want to impeach Biden for not enforcing the border, there you might have a case. But I don't think that Mayorkas following his orders and failing in his job meets the definition of high crimes and misdemeanors, which is supposed to be what impeachment is.
I
The
agree
Demo-
with you technically.
the
Technically, I
Democrats
agree
went
with you, Dr. Lopton. Go ahead, sorry.
the Democrats
But
went off the rails with their impeachment of Trump. They never
thank
had
you,
evidence
Nancy.
of high crimes and misdemeanors. They pushed it through anyway. This is the Republicans basically going, what's good for the goose is good for the gander. But you know what? That's got to stop because now Trump may win the next election, but the Republicans aren't going to keep power forever. And then the Democrats are going to take their revenge. And where does it
Yeah,
end?
because of Nancy Pelosi, impeachment went from high crimes and misdemeanors to a no confidence vote. That's just how it is. I agree with
Yeah.
you 100% on all your technical arguments, but I think it's still good because it highlights the incompetency of the entire administration. I think it's what's good for the goose is good for the gander. Good riddance. Well, nothing's going to happen, but Mayorkas is a piece of shit as well. But it's also very interesting. You look at how big this issue is. It might, no pun intended, trumps the economy. 61% are looking at crime as their number one issue. The border crisis is certainly right up there, definitely number one. And then we have a new spin on things in New York. And by the way, New York will go Democrat, I believe. And it's pretty safe, but not solid blue because you have now the gangs of New York, the 2024 edition, running wild and consolidating in New York, Chicago, and other major cities.
Yeah,
Beautiful.
you have violent gangs coming up from Venezuela, which,
Best
by
and
the
the
way,
brightest.
Biden gave migrants from Venezuela the go ahead. He said, "Oh yes, if you're from Venezuela, things are bad there. It's okay. You can come. We'll give you amnesty." But what's coming up is not people trying to escape oppression, it's criminals. And you have
Yeah,
violent criminal gangs whose weapon of choice is the machete, stabbing people, robbing
beautiful.
people, attacking police officers with impunity. Cops in New York got attacked. The people were arrested and then freed without bail. They immediately fled the jurisdiction. God only knows where they are.
After flipping the bird, yes.
Yes, after flipping the
But
bird
Bragg,
to America,
but Bragg was too busy pursuing a stupid civil suit against Trump. But yeah, okay, priorities,
but it
priorities.
is
Uh,
absolutely ridiculous. And people are tired of the crime. They're tired of being afraid to walk down the street, and it's getting worse. And I mean, I find it absolutely amazing because when liberals try to spin the crime stats, they always fall back like, well, homicides are going down. It's like, yes, but every other crime is going up. The
There
fact
you
that
go. Yeah.
people are surviving doesn't make it good.
Oh yeah, with new medical practices, it's still not a good indication. What do you think of the fact that when we're looking at this overall situation, we have Senator, the House Intel Chairman Turner is begging Biden to declassify sensitive and serious national security documents. I have to say that's probably related to the border.
It probably is. We know for a fact that terrorists have come across the border. We have caught some people on the terrorist watch list, but the number of people we've caught is far outweighed by the number of known gotaways. And we don't know who those are. The odds are, given how many terrorists we've caught, that yes, some of those gotaways are criminals, are terrorists, and
Ah,
they are probably planning actions here because we've already seen terrorist organizations take shots at American troops, take shots at civilian ships. They're not restricting who they target. And there's no reason for them not to be planning an attack here. We know that, again, we know they're here. And yes, Biden should declassify that information because every police department needs to know about it. The people should be aware of potential threats. The fact of the matter is, if more people had known about the possibility of 9/11, the odds of it happening drop dramatically. So the fact that people know there's a possibility of a threat and more people can keep an eye out and no, let's face it, the cops cannot be everywhere. The Federal Bureau of Investigation, the CIA, the whoever is involved in trying to keep us safe cannot be everywhere. We need to be aware of what is going on so that, again, there's a reason they posted all those signs. If you see something, say something. Well, we need to know what we're supposed to be looking out for.
I would 100% agree with that. I also would like your comments and your thoughts on the no funding of what went through the Ukraine uh, Israeli bill without any tie to our own borders. I think that was a good move.
I don't know. I'm a little torn. Yes, I want the border security funded. I also think we do still need to fund Israel and Ukraine to a certain extent. However, I am not a fan at all of bundling these all together. I
No,
think every funding bill should be this is what we're funding, this is how we're going to pay for it, period. Not
I
tied
agree.
to something else. Everything should be individual. And that's something that the extreme right has been fighting against is that we've been pushing these omnibus bills that nobody can read them before it's time to vote on them because there's so much crammed into them. We should be passing bills one at a time. This is what this is for. Yay or nay, done. And we've got
Yeah,
to stop bundling all this crap.
and I also, yes, we're not an insurance company. I also, though, believe that we need to. I get it with the Putin thing and all that stuff, but what's the exit strategy? What are we doing? You can't just endlessly fund Ukraine. Is there any diplomatic initiatives? Is there European involvement? You got to, we can't just have an open check forever.
No,
That's bullshit.
we can't have an open checkbook. There needs to be a strategy. And part of the problem is that the Biden administration is essentially trying to do to Russia now what the I can't remember the committee that was doing it back in the 80s, But the original plan for stopping the Russians in Afghanistan
I remember that. Yeah.
was essentially what they did to us in Vietnam. It was just keep, give Afghanistan enough to keep killing the Russians, but not enough to stop them. And anybody who's seen the movie Charlie Wilson's War knows that he was the one that essentially changed the strategy to go, no, if we're going to be participating in this, we need to fight to win. That is what we need to do in Ukraine. We can't just keep them going so that more and more Russians die. We need to have a strategy to end this once and for all.
With all and diplomacy on the table as well.
Yes, there has
You
to be
just,
diplomacy. There has to be economic sanctions. There has to be military strategy. It all has to work together. And quite frankly, the one thing that Biden has been screwing up over and over again is that this actually could have been over already if he had unleashed the US energy industry, because we could have undercut Russian oil sales, cut their money so that they didn't have the funding to keep the war going.
well, he's not exactly a master strategist. Let's
No,
just be honest. And any way that you have, basically, this is no joke. You have someone that's incapable of standing trial. How are they ever going to give any kind of a diplomatic solution to this? They're incapable of it, and it's very scary. What's also scary, though, is a couple of things, is that Nikki Haley seems like she's not bowing out. I think she's making a huge mistake. She's trailing Trump by like 35 points in her own state. It's time to call it a day and stop being a shill of the Democratic Party.
no, Nikki Haley. Again,
No chance. Zero chance.
I've been a big supporter of her. I think she could do the job well. She has been a horrible campaigner, and she made
Mm.
one major fatal mistake, and that was not getting out after New Hampshire.
Huge. Huge. She could have been a golden
down.
person.
Yeah, she doubled down. She's attacking the Republicans. She's attacking Trump. Essentially what she's doing is not only doesn't she have a chance to win this election, she has killed her chances in future elections. No, if she had bowed out, she said, hey, if she had said, you know what, I gave it a good shot. Obviously, the voters want Trump to be the Republican candidate. I will support what the voters say. You don't even have to say you're going to support Trump. Say you're going to support the will of the voters. But she just self-destructed. It was horrible to watch, and I think she's just digging herself deeper and deeper.
I thought it was really bad and sophomoric that Trump called her bird brain, but I question how bright really is she. It's pretty clear she could have been a superhero, female, young. She could have, saved her gunpowder for 2028, and the rest is history, as they say. But now I think she's burned too many bridges. I think she doesn't have the luster she once had. Correct?
No, she certainly doesn't. And that's the thing. I mean, if you take a look at the other Republican candidates that pulled out, Tim
They live
Scott
for another day.
Tim Scott has not only retained his luster, there's talk about putting him on the ticket as vice president.
No question.
Viswami, as he's out there
He'll have
campaigning
a
for
cabinet.
Trump.
He'll have a cabinet position.
Yeah, he can have a
No doubt.
cabinet position. He can run in a future election. Even DeSantis, who self-destructed before the first primary, is coming out of this better than Nikki Haley is.
I would agree. And finally, on the political front, we had the runoff in New York. I know CNN couldn't do gavel to gavel coverage. I think it's much to do about nothing. And I also think the Republicans, I'm thinking, just leave Santos in, let him run again. following year, but it's much to do about nothing.
Yeah, the results of the vote in New York is not what the Democrats want it to be, and not what they're trying to make it out to be. I'm forgetting the Democrat's name, but he previously held the seat. He lost to
Yes.
Santos and then came back. This was not a solidly Republican seat. This is a district that's flipped back and forth over and over again. Also, you
Plus, he
have to,
ran against Biden. Not against.
well,
He
yes.
ran parallel to Biden. Yes.
Well, no. He did run against Biden's policies. That was
Yes.
what he did. But he also outspent the Republican, I believe, 20-1. This was a special election, not a regularly scheduled election. Special elections always have much lower turnouts, so it's less indicative. Plus, New York actually got almost a foot of snow yesterday during the election, keeping people
True.
home. So the turnout was very low. What does this mean for Democrats? Not a whole lot. What the takeaway really should be, the Republicans knew that removing George Santos could erode their majority in the House, but they did the right thing and removed him anyway. Take a look over at the Democrats in the Senate and the Democratic senator from New Jersey, who John Fetterman seems to be the only one calling for him to be removed. The Democrats know if they remove him, they can lose their majority in the Senate. So they would rather back a criminal than
Felon.
do the right thing. That is important. That is an important takeaway, that the Republicans put doing the right thing above keeping their majority.
100%. And on a lighter note, the inventor of Pop Tarts dead at 96. There you go.
I don't know that that's a lighter note, but
That's true. When you look at Uncle Joe in command of the nuclear arsenal, that is a lighter note. So, Dr. Lopkin, another great show. We're on all the access points for podcasts, doing well. Our listeners can contribute to our show, give their input if they like, correct?
yes, we'd love to hear from you. You can go to xvadio.com/connect. Let us know what you're thinking. You can also message us through the Carnivore Radio Facebook page. And of course, you can catch every episode of Carnivore Bites at xvadio.com, the Carnivore Radio website, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Audible, Amazon Music, and any platform that respects freedom of speech.
I thank you, Dr. Lopkin. See you next week.
We'll see you then.